This video is brought to you by BTI Institute, a New Jersey leader in certification-based management training.
You should see that Trello board, and that's a pretty cool background. I guess Nitin, you chose it. It's
Bob, are we going to follow what you're going to do step by step? Is that what the process is going to be?
Yes. So what we're going to do is the first thing. Thank you for that lead in. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to basically explain lean coffee in progress. Let me, and then Nitin will then do the explaining as far as what it is and what to expect. And what you're going to see is as you in the audience add content, it's going to this content in this first column is going to grow. And then we're going to talk about being able to vote on items and things like that. So go ahead, Nitin, if you can explain lean coffee.
Yeah, thank you there, Bob. So a lean coffee is a very dynamic, interactive, agenda-free event with a group of people who want to just talk about a few things of common interest. For us, it's in the world of agility. It's a very visual thing, as you can see. It's very reflective of Kanban and swim lanes. If you go left to right, we've got a few things that we want to discuss or to do is a traditional convention or label. And as you look one lane over, there are things that are in progress. So Bob just moved a card over, explain lean coffee. And what we were also doing in the background was adding people to the Trello board. That's the tool we're using. If you have any blockers or impediments, we can put it there. Maybe put things in a parking lot till eventually we get to what's called a done state. And then if people want to share any aha moments or points of reflection, they can gladly add a card there as well. It's a simple tool. Just hit the plus button, add a card, you get a pop-up, and you can do that as well. So some people have been with us for a while. They've seen this before. And as you can see, the to do or discuss has got a collection of topics. And they're small because we don't want you to have like topic 1, 2, 3, all combined in one place. It's meant to be small. So if you have multiple thoughts or multiple areas to discuss, just create another card. This is always insightful also as a silent writing exercise. You know, some people are extroverts, verbose, and they can dominate a conversation without realizing at times, not necessarily with poor intentions, that's just their nature. But when we give everybody an opportunity just to go in and write things, you might have another aha moment. Hey, I was thinking of that topic as well, you know? Or a moderator might say, hey, these two look almost next to identical, right? So that's looking at the lanes going left to right. And we like to time box these as well, which I will do in the background so that we don't necessarily need to solve for anything, right? It's just to have a good interaction, facilitate ideas, see if there are insights. And even if you need to debrief a little bit after the hour, Bob and I often stay on. So on the left, just going top down, take some time if you haven't done it just to hit add a card. If you do have an issue, you can put your topic in the chat. And between Bob and I, we can easily capture that as well. So let's give it about a minute or so and see if there's anything else that you would like to add. And I will monitor the chat.
And again, it's at the bottom of the to-do column. You can see a plus sign that says add a card. And when you click on it, it's very simple. You just type your text and click on add card. And this, this is an Agile discussion group. And the whole idea is that Nitin and I are here to facilitate it. We're going to take a pass at, providing answers. But if anyone in the audience has ideas that they want to share, that's what this is all about. It's all about collaboration and sharing experiences and things.
Yep, well said, Bob. So yeah, we're starting to see some more cards come up and pop in there. And again, folks, if you have any technical glitches, you can just post a question or a topic in the chat. We will gladly put it in for you. I've got quite a few things here.
This is great. That's what this is all about. I see somebody already voted, and we're going to show you everybody else how to do that. And the whole idea of voting is what we hope you will leave here with is a tool that you can bring back to the office tomorrow. And if you have a group of people and you just want to just talk about items, you could easily facilitate this by basically just following what we did here. You don't need to use Trello. This is just a great tool since we have an audience that everybody's at a different location. But if you're sitting in an office, this could just as easily be a whiteboard with Post-it notes. So, it's something that you could do anywhere. You could do like a lunch and learn and just say, hey, let's talk about what's slowing us down, what problems are we having, and get everybody to put items up on the board for that. And so, Nitin, do you want to explain how to vote?
Yep. So, and that's also another question in the chat. If you click on one of these cards, it'll open up some details and some metadata. And if you start scrolling down, you will get a vote option. If you're on a smartphone or another device, it may not be in the bottom right. It could be somewhere in the middle. But that's the thumbs up icon. And if you click on that, as Bob is doing right now, you'll see a little check mark. And if you close this card, and then behind the scenes, when we go back to the main board, as a facilitator or as a moderator, we'll see a number 1, and it says, right? So depending on your interest on the topics on the left, you could just give it a thumbs up. You can vote across different cards if you'd like. Try to stick to 3. And we can already start seeing some people have given that thumbs up or a vote for certain topics of interest.
And this is very familiar to an Agile technique called dot voting, where if you have a group of people and you want to get consensus from the group, you would say, okay, everybody, you get 3 votes. And like Nitin just said, you have 3 votes. So basically one person could put 3 votes on one card, or I don't think Trello allows that, but if you're doing it live, you can. Or you could put 1 vote on 3 separate cards. And then that way everybody would have their say. Then what you do is you take the highest number of votes as the item that you talk about first, and then it works that way. So as you can see here, this first item has 2 votes so far, and this one has 5. So there's quite a bit of interest in this item. So what I'm going to do, and some tools do this for you automatically, it will actually reorder the list. So what I'm doing is now ordering the list from the top to the bottom with the highest number of votes on the item, and this is a living thing. It's not static. And so if, as we're talking, you have a new item you want to talk about, you could add it here, and you could also vote. So I'm trying to do the sorting right now as we speak.
Yep.
Any questions
as you
so
can
far?
see, it's a very easy tool to use, quick drag and drops, really visual.
I think if you hit the 3 dots that are in the top right of that card stack, you could sort by most voted.
Thank you. Hey, you took my job away. I'm just joking, but that's
Just
great.
made
Thank
you
you.
more agile.
That's right. That's good. Thank you for saying that, and not watch me dragging and dropping all night. Thanks. So I guess, Nitin, how much longer do we have for voting?
I think that's good. We've already got a solid 7 and a contender. And certainly people can keep adding more to this as they need. And let's just move things into the next swim lane. And
So-
behind the scenes, I'll add a timer. let's say about 6 minutes.
I'll do one last sort. Okay, it seems like we're getting that one quite a bit. I'll read it off, and if the person that put it in, you don't have to identify yourself if you have anything you want to add to it. So basically the item is how to handle dependencies among user stories, especially if another workstream places as a dependent in later sprints. So Nitin, do you want to take up?
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
This is the fun part. Dependencies are natural, right? They're going to happen, particularly if you are going to be scaling or you have a multitude of teams. And the great thing is, or the good thing is, you've actually identified a dependency. It's better to do that quicker rather than later, believe it or not. And what I would do is somehow try to facilitate the conversation between the product owners of the two areas. If something has to bubble up for something sooner, then let the product owners negotiate, charm, and talk to members of their dev team to move it up. In the rare instance that it's, it's the same product owner, that might be a little easier, but I'm just assuming you're going to have two product owners across the two streams, and you're going to have to let them figure it out and sort it out to see if this is acceptable to the organization, or does something have to change? What do you think?
I really like what you said, but whenever I see a dependency, the first thing I think is, why isn't that skill on the other team? And sometimes it might be a very easy decision to make, where maybe that other team is constantly pulling on this one team for this one particular skill. So then what you try to do is actually have the other team member train a person on the team that's asking for that skill. So that way they become less and less dependent on other teams. And that aligns with this whole feature team versus component team mindset, where a feature team is a team that has all the skills necessary to complete items in the backlog. And that's the ideal thing to drive toward. And I'm not saying it's easy, but if you can do that, you'll find that the team can be much more efficient and productive, because they're not doing this whole cross-team dependency. Because the minute you start depending on other teams, you need somebody to be a traffic cop. And like Nitin said, you could use the POs and stuff like that. But in all my experiences, whenever we always depended on another team, it would always slow us down. Sometimes it would be 2 times longer. And so I always try to lead with that whole feature team mindset, but you can't always do that. Does anyone in the audience have any ideas, other ideas?
So I want to add some more color, if I may, to this question.
Sure.
Yeah, so this is a very practical situation in which it's a huge project. There are, say, 15 work streams across it. So it is like free for all. Team A can place a dependency on team B. Team B can place a dependency on team D. Team D can place on A. So it's like a full jungle of everyone placing a dependency on another. So now, how does team A decide its priority? Because 5 teams have put their dependency on this. And then if team C is dependent on A, now team A has put a dependency on C, and then team B has put a dependency. So it's like mind-boggling who is dependent, and this dependency can not only be assigned during the initial creation of the product backlog, it will be like an ever-growing as more discovery is made. So this is a practical difficulty when there are so many multiple teams tagging every other team on each other. How do we get traction in this place?
Yeah, that is colorful. I just want to take a small step back. Recently, the teams that I'm working with have a lot of external dependencies, and I've asked them to slow down and simply say, hey, is it truly a dependency, or do you need to coordinate getting some information from another team, and then you can progress? So there's a coordination activity but that is something that can be brought back as a spike or share findings with the team and consuming things within. The other thing that I'm hearing is your product backlog is truly intended to be open and visible to all, but we need to really just make sure that if there are things being placed, again, the product owner should have a final say as to when those things will be bubbled up and consumed by members of the dev team. And you'll need that Scrum Master to kind of protect that philosophy and mindset as well. So it's good that at least these things are being identified, but I think we might need to just slow down just a little bit. And again, get the product owner closely engaged and say, hey, look at, we have our own set of work that we thought about, and we have some other things. What do we do first?
But sometimes you may want to reprioritize because it'll make your job easier if you wait till that other team finishes theirs. So it's a discussion that you might want to have at the beginning to understand where the dependencies are. You don't know all of them, and that you might do at the beginning of your sprint where you make sure you have your dependencies further clarified. But sometimes you can't avoid the dependencies, and you might have to do extra work if that story is not there yet. So
can we not ask the resource, like, what is the percentage of work that he is aligned to this project? Like maybe he can, the same resource can divide his number of hours in different projects.
We're getting into some anti-patterns here, which is, so a cautionary note, utopian and ideal Scrum teams are dedicated full-time. You don't want to split people and time and start looking at hours. That will likely slow you down, and there's studies around that as well when I get to task estimations and task hours and so on and so forth. So just a cautionary note, depending on how your teams are evolving. One other quick thought, and we're at time, but quick note, I don't know if people are refining things together. So let's say you had 5 teams, but can they come together at some junction or some representation to do a backlog refinement together? So they can have some initial conversations to identify those dependencies and see how things would then flow naturally one after the other, and then see which teams are capable or can pick it up. So that's just another idea, have that earlier connection point rather than waiting for, let's say, a sprint planning to say, hey, look at, it's all the same enterprise. We're all part of the same company, and we might be juggling different products, but let's come together and see what we can tackle quicker and upfront. So any last thoughts on this before we move on to another topic? And if anything lingers, we'll do an open forum later on as well.
Like the last thing I'd like to say is, like, you want to take a look at what each team's doing as far as what are they working as components? Are they just building a little piece of it? Or are they, taking something more broad? So you really want to look at what each team is doing, how they're delivering it, and how the organization is structured. Like, do you have one product owner looking over all these teams? And I know one product owner can't handle 12 teams, but maybe they might have product owners underneath them. Like, if you're in less, they call it area product owners. And then basically that top product owner would help coordinate the thing, saying, okay, let's do it this way, and then get the area product owners to get things lined up. But yeah, like you said, Nitin, we're out of time. Is it okay to move on?
Okay, I'm okay with that. Again, we could come back to it in the open forum at the end.
All right, so the next one with the most votes is, how does capacity planning work with points, and how does it differ from other methods? This, if it's okay with you, Nitin, I'll take a first pass.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
This has been it's always challenging, especially if you're doing a agile transformation, that's maybe being driven by a PMO, because the first thing they ask for is what is everybody's capacity? And I believe like that question came up during the last discussion where you don't really want to say, well, this person's going to spend 50% of their time on this, 40% of their time on this. And the reason that's an anti-pattern is because a true agilist is self-managing. So in essence, if you tell a team member, you're going to spend 80% of your time working on this, and the rest of your time you can do is going to be for email and maybe training. And that kind of takes away the whole idea of self-managing, where the self-managing team basically comes to it saying, well, in this sprint, during the first week, I have training. So when I volunteer, I'm not going to volunteer for 3 weeks of work. I'm just going to volunteer for 2. And then they're also thinking, well, wait a minute, I'm going to be in these kind of meetings. I'm going to be on these kind of sessions. So maybe, you know, my overall time that I can spend on this work might be maybe 50 or 60%. And that's basically, it's up to the individual team member. And that's where the whole idea of capacity planning comes into play and how it becomes an anti-pattern. And then for the story points, it's totally different, because a lot of teams will fall into the trap of equating points to hours. Like they'll say 1 point equals like 1 to 3 hours, 2 points equals 3 to 5 hours, you know, that kind of thing. And it basically brings them down into that whole hour mindset, where story points is really the amount of work. It's like a relative estimate. And what you're doing is saying, okay, I did this story in the last sprint and it was 3 points. Now I'm estimating a new story in this sprint, and yeah, it's like twice the amount of work. So maybe that's a 5 points worth of work. So they're totally different, and we could probably have a whole session on this. So Nitin, what do you think?
All good points, Bob. I sometimes do something unconventional, and this might just depend on how your teams are evolving or where they're at. If they're starting up, for example, I say, you know what? Forget story points, the concept of velocity, hours. Let's just look at your backlog, take a look at the work, and see how many of these stories can you slot out, let's say for the next 2 weeks. That's it. And at the end, you just keep a count of things. And what you'll find is people might say, you know, if we had kind of sliced these a little thinner or smaller, we could have shown more productivity or throughput, right? It's just a count. And I let this happen for maybe 2 sprints, 3 sprints. And at the end, we then get into story pointing and so on, which we get to velocity amongst other things. But yeah, if you have past trends and metrics, and if you do have velocity that you use, then that's what it would be based on the average sum of your product backlog items, like your stories, your spikes, etc.
One thing that
See what it is you can do over there. So those are some of my thoughts. Let's open it up to others, Bob.
Well, Demetrius had his hand up before. Demetrius, do you still?
Yeah, this has been well, not the capacity plan per se, but the sprint. I mean, the story points has been just a big pain for me on multiple teams, trying to get them away from equating the points to time. Like current team is like, okay, 1 point is a day. I'm like, okay, no, it's not a day. That's not how we do it. And I try to send them to Mike Cohen's, you know, article talks about points and why you don't want to do it this way. But I can't. It's like this massive mountain that I'm trying to get away from, this anti-pattern, and I can't figure out a good example to tell the teams to get them to shift their mindset.
I'll give them Nitin's method. I'll give you a quick solution right now. If you have the powers, right, and you can tell them, hey, let's take a leap of faith, forget story points for another sprint or 2. Just look at your stories and see what you can slot out. Okay. At the end of 2 sprints, I want you to, if possible, if you're there locally, print out every story on a small piece of paper, cut it up, maybe a Scrum Master can help, lay it out on a conference table, and have people round robin and say, which one do you think was the biggest? Which one do you think was the smallest? And now you got some sort of a reference range, right? And then have people go around, take turns, and move things about. And it's a comparison. That is the relative estimation concept, right? And what you'll find is people will eventually agree, give them about 2-3 rounds at most. They'll say, hey, this thing is the smallest, this thing's the largest, and stuff in the middle. And then the smallest, you put it as a 1 point, then 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, using a Fibonacci series. That's your model. They have now at this point experienced something, right? How did the last sprint or two go? Were there dependencies? Were there blockers? Did it take more time, than the other stuff? Did they not anticipate something, right? They've actually experienced something that is tangible now, and go with that approach. So if you, again, have the powers to be, and if management gives you pushback, say, look if you give me 2 sprints, not a lot of time, I promise you, I can still get you numerical data at the end of 2 sprints. And I've used this with teams that have been working for a year and a half and have struggled with points. I did this exercise. It's like, this makes sense. All our other points and the concepts and everything we're equating to, we're putting that aside now. This is it. This is our reference.
So I like this. I love this example. Unfortunately, they're already in the trenches. I've got 5 teams. They're already reporting on velocity. It's already been measured. I mean, the leadership is expecting to see all these measurements. But what I like is I can take advantage of this example you gave in the retro.
Sure.
I can use this in the retro to show them, just think about the stuff that you've already done. What, which one, the same exercise. I won't go once to repeat it, but same exercise you just went through, but do that in a retro so they can reflect. And then hopefully the light will click on and they'll say, this makes sense. But thank you. Thank you.
One minor nuance to this. So when you think about capacity planning, it's, and I didn't hinted upon this, but it's really the person or the team that's doing the work should be getting the estimate, should be getting there. And really, it's the agreement between the product owner and that team member or team of what work you can do. And that's really capacity planning. Can they do it or can't? If not, then break it apart to smaller.
I guess I got a just to Seth, I appreciate that. What if the team and the product owner have unrealistic goals? So
that never happens.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't. No, but in my world, it is happening. I had a team that had constantly, they had a capacity of 150 points, but they were only delivering 20 points. And they consistently do this. But the product owner was like, okay, well, you said you can do it. You got the capacity. Okay, go ahead. Because they keep pushing. They want more and more and more. And the team is like, oh, yeah, we can. They're so optimistic, but not realistic.
So this is where Scrum is about empiricism, right?
And how do your demos go at that point? Because I mean, it should be all coming out in the wash.
Right. Some of the teams are doing the demos and some are not. So we're not able to your point, we're not able to see how it flushes out. Like, okay, you're not able to give the demo. You're saying you can do this stuff, but we have no demo. We have no product at the end, and everything's keep rolling over sprint after sprint after sprint. And you're like,
that might be the angle you can take to get to the ultimate goal without pushing on the buttons.
Good.
Sorry.
I've got 2 nuggets out of this meeting. I'm already good. I'm good. Thanks.
And if you might want to consider, instead of calling it 150 point capacity, call it 150 point velocity, and it will correct itself. Like, say your team is at 150. If they do 2 20-point sprints, you take the average of 150 plus 20 plus 20, guess what? That number is going to probably be around 80. Again, I didn't do the math, but it will happen automatically. So now all of a sudden, their velocity is not 150. It's realistically 80. It's because you should always be looking at the last 3 sprints, taking the average, and really that's really just a best guess based on the last 3 sprints. We think we can do this much work. You also consider, like, if you have some players, some team members that are out of the office, they have plans for vacation. So basically you knock that 150 point velocity down to accommodate that. And so if you let the system, actually operate, and really, instead of looking at 150 point capacity, look at it as a velocity and constantly recalibrate. And then let the team only, and since they're not delivering, I would, as a scrum master, I would only let my team commit to that number. Usually you try to let the team commit a little bit over, but let's get the team plan to done ratio, better. And then you can start having the team trying to do more. I don't know if that was helpful or not.
So we usually find ourselves with a duality. You start off talking about one thing in Scrum, and it leads to other things. Let's see if we can move on to another card. I forgot to put the time on this one. And again, we'll talk more in the open forum.
All right, so I'm going to resort it just to make sure. All right. Suggestions to get team members to understand they need to add their own cards, not rely on project manager or scrum master. And if I could add to that, I'd say add their own cards and update their own cards. So do you want to take a pass at that?
Yeah, sometimes I pretend my keyboard isn't working. And there are days that I've just been late to the daily huddle, Then there are days that I've used other techniques. If, again, we were co-located in a conference room, I had a rotating keyboard, which was wireless. So everybody, by the time they got it, they had to really take on what they were doing. But yeah, it's about setting expectations. But if it's not following through, you got to get a little sneaky at times and see what works, And yeah, you try it a few times. Hey, for some reason, every day at this time, my keyboard goes bonkers. I don't know if I got a virus or what. And you'll find they'll start updating. Any other ideas, folks, that are creative or otherwise? I'm assuming people understand whatever tool that you use. They're comfortable with it. They don't feel any kind of fear or reprimand in adding things in a certain way. And certainly it's a retrospective item as well. It's interesting because Scrum does say, hey, even for your daily Scrums, you don't really need a Scrum Master to be present every day or is mandatory, right? The whole idea of being a collective, self-organizing team is to be able just to talk to each other, have a plan, and reflect it on a tool if you do use it.
But if we translate this card instead of Kanban to a sprint, then it's the product owner and the teams that jointly add the user stories, right? It's not that anyone can just keep adding user stories, or is that true?
All right, if I could answer that, you definitely brought up a key point where, items in the backlog are most usually created by the product owner. And sometimes there's technical items that could be that, working with the product owner, they might say, well, if you want that database, we need a server. So you basically add your non-functional requirements as well. Who adds it? It's usually like the product owner team, but sometimes the Scrum Master might help, or sometimes a dev team member might help. But if you're really advancing in this art, you would actually then, during your sprint planning, you would actually take that item and break it into subtasks. And a subtask is basically, it's a small piece of work that could be done in 8 hours or less. And so that is what is totally owned by the team member, because they would own the subtask to actually complete that item in the backlog. And then that way you can also verify, like if you have a 3-point story and they end up creating 20 subtasks and it ends up being 120 hours. It's like, wait a minute, guys, maybe this story is a little bigger than 3 points. So these are all things, and I can't say all teams do subtasking, but that's a very powerful thing because it really then makes the work visual. Because without subtasks, the item would stay in progress on your board for the entire sprint. But if you have subtasks under that item, you would see movement, and it should be daily if you do it right, because it's 8 hours or less. So every day they should be moving at least some task. And it also helps identify where there's impediments, and it lets other team members help as well, because it makes what they're doing very visual.
Frank Materia has his hand up. Frank, your microphone is up.
Wanted to point out and add, in addition to what was just covered, team working agreements can also clarify the roles on, like if assignees need to do updates or who would do follow-ups. But I think the last comment about subtasks is one thing that we've done in our team.
So how we doing on time, Nitin?
I think we're good to move on to the next card. Let's do that. Again, good feedback from the audience, and just getting up new ideas, additional ideas, even in the chat. So let's look at the next one.
I would like to discuss this topic today. What is the most suitable discipline Agile certification to get when you are a business analyst? And then I think maybe John might be the best person to answer that, since he's our DA expert.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh my goodness. Oh man, I didn't expect to get the spotlight here. So I don't know who this question came from. So, okay, so what is the most suitable discipline Agile?
It's from me.
Oh,
It's
from
me.
Oh, I think it's from Sandy.
Oh,
Okay.
I'll say it's from me.
Raymond.
Oh, Raymond. Okay. So anyway, so what is the most suitable discipline Agile certification to get when you are a business analyst? I guess the best place to start is with the very basic discipline Agile certification. So there are 4 discipline Agile certifications, the highest one being a coach. So we're not thinking about that one, right? So the first one is the Discipline Agile Scrum Master, which is DASM. And that's really to learn the foundations, the principles, and to learn about the Discipline Agile toolkit. Just a little clarification here too, and we always do this when we talk about Discipline Agile. Discipline Agile, unlike say Scrum or SAFe or some other Agile practices, is it's just a toolkit. It doesn't have any prescribed practices and things like that. And so the big thing about Discipline Agile is that because it's a toolkit, is that it can be customized and it can be adjusted to your particular way of working. And so every time you see Discipline Agile, you hear that term WOW. So choose your WOW. So choose your way of working. And so it allows you really to start with whatever your organization is, and you can eventually evolve to a particular state that works for your specific organization and your specific project. And so the best place to start if you're a business analyst it would definitely be the Discipline Agile Scrum Master. And so you learn those principles and foundations. If you evolve into, if your organization uses Discipline Agile, or at least your team does, and you want to learn the skills necessarily to lead teams in Discipline Agile, then you would go to the next certification that PMI offers, which is the Discipline Agile Senior Scrum Master. And so that would be the next one. And then the third one here, because I already mentioned the Discipline Agile Coach, and then the third one is called the Discipline Agile Value Stream Consultant. And that's really to provide you with the skills you need to really guide your organization towards managing and leading by value stream. Now, I think hopefully that would answer the question. I'm going to post into the chat a little bit later. I'm going to post the link to the PMI Discipline Agile webpage, website, I should say. I'll also post the link so you don't have to look for it, where you can actually read the latest version of the Discipline Agile book. This is edition 1. The second edition has come out already, and I'll put a link there. You're a PMI member, you should be able to download a digital copy for free. And then the third and final link that I will post is that everybody gets a free 1-hour introduction to Discipline Agile. So I'm gonna post that link too. So I'll post those 3 links there, and hopefully that'll answer whatever questions you may have about Discipline Agile. Are there any other questions at that time? Ramon, did I answer your question?
No. Oh, no, thank you very, very much. I will appreciate when you have time to post mainly the last one, the last Scrum Master.
Yeah. So I'm going to post those 3 links. Yeah. And I'll post those 3 links. If you have any other questions, I mean, if we have time left here, you can ask me here, or feel free to email me and I'll be more than happy.
No, it's okay for me. It's okay for
okay.
me.
Oh, no need to be shy.
Something to say about the depend from the previous topic about the dependencies. So that yes, there's no option of moving the complete story to the next sprint. So that has something that I have to say because it's important. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So
You want to talk about the
dependency cannot be done.
Okay.
About the other topics that were discussed today. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. If there's no other questions or comments about this one, Agile, am I done, Bob and Nitin?
Nitin's got the time box. So.
Yeah, you've got about a minute unless somebody else has anything.
Are there any other questions that anybody has about Discipline Agile since we're here, or Discipline Agile certification? Let me ask, I'll just add this then. Nothing about Discipline Agile would invalidate anything that I mean, whatever your shop is using, whether it's Scrum, whether it's SAFe or any other Agile framework that you're using, nothing in Discipline Agile would invalidate that, and is actually a nice supplement to what you're doing. So I encourage you, actually, even if you're happy with SAFe and you're happy with Scrum, look into Discipline Agile. I think it's a very a good tool set, and it might introduce some good ideas to you.
Okay.
Thank you for that, John.
All right. If I want to be an Agile trainer, how much time commitment is needed? I guess if the person that wrote it could clarify it when they, like, is it a trainer within your organization, or is it like you want to become a certified trainer in scrum.org or in Scrum Alliance? I guess.
This is Sunil here. It's my question, and I was looking at being a trainer within the organization.
Does your organization use any particular flavor of agility, or is it scaling?
There is no scaling on different projects during the development stage. Usually for the new applications, we use Agile.
Okay, so no scaling, no particular flavor. So you just want to share knowledge.
It is Scrum.
As in a certifying body, so scrum.org has a string of certifications, and then the professional Scrum trainers who are able not only to train but then lead people into certifications. Scrum Alliance has certified Scrum trainers or CSTs, which again can offer training, and then that leads to certifications. So if you're looking into training internally within the organization, am I on the right track? That's what you're looking to do. So it's really dependent on the need of the organization and whatever time you can put in. It's certainly a commitment. Some people do it in a modularized fashion, pick certain topics, present it, rinse and repeat because everybody has a busy day. Some people give full 1 day, 2 day training as well. Some people record sessions that they can be just kind of trickled into the organization, and then you're there more as a coaching person. So I'm not sure we can put an exact time to this. It's really just how much you're willing to put in and the needs of the organization. If you start looking at Scrum Alliance and scrum.org and other training institutions, it's going to be a long journey because they really do want to see the work that you can put out, your heart, and they want to get recommendations. They want to see you in action. And there's a big application process in the background as well. Bob, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that you were spot on with everything you said. The other, at least this is my personal opinion, to be a good trainer, you have to really be an expert. So if you want to really, serve your audience well, you need to be educated, and like things I'm thinking is maybe like the IC Agile boot camp, where it's a week-long session that does a deep dive on facilitation and coaching. And also you might want to start looking at possibly coaching, because one of the stances of an Agile coach is you're a mentor, you're a trainer, you're a coach, and you're also a facilitator. So those kinds of things can kind of build your skill set so that you'll be able to really be effective in that. And and you can't wave a wand and like overnight you're going to have all this knowledge. It takes quite a bit of time to build on it. But if I was in your spot, I think maybe I try to get the organization to pay for me to go to a 5-day project management, the Agile boot camp from IC Agile, and then because that would give you a really good overview of the things that you should be looking at, because that totally changed my whole trajectory when I did that, and try to do it in person. Okay. And then, did you have anything else?
And I think we're at time as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can somebody explain the concept of PI planning and how does that work? Now, Nitin, since you're an SPC, I think I'll let you take the lead on this one.
I just facilitated a PI plan today and launched mini art. And I'm a little zapped of energy, but the lean coffees always perk me up. The concept of PI planning comes from SAFe. Product increment is the full form. What it is the further breakdown of epics and features into user stories, into slotted times. And the idea is, as you have more teams, how do we get them to coordinate and talk to each other, at the end of which we'll see what's called a program board. This is listing all your features, which will be taken up by independent teams across several sprints, typically 5+1. There will be some visual indicators such as red strings to see where are the dependencies across the features. And then if you have to do a deeper dive, you can look at each team and see what are the features that they're doing, as well as the user story slotted for those cycles of time, typically 2-week cycles. At the end of which, we will also get some sort of a risk assessment. They say roaming the board. Is it owned? Is it identified? Is it mitigated? And at the end, after this and presentation to leadership, you will get a thumbs up or confidence vote between a range of 1 and 5. Earlier on in the day, and again, these can go from like 1-day events to 3 days. You have the business speak about the vision of the product or what is launched. You have people from architecture talking, people from UX, UI. So it's a very collaborative effort in trying to get people either in a room or in a virtual session where you have the coordination of a multitude of teams to lay out work for cycles of time. So PI planning is very elaborate. People who are taking formal training take like week-long trainings for these. There is also what's known as the Safe Big Picture. You can click on and look at and look through. There's some videos, but it's very elaborate. Let me pause because I've thrown a lot out there. Are there any other SPCs out here, or those who have played the RTE role, release train engineer, or those who have led an art launch? Let's open it up to them.
Yeah, also an SPC. Nitin basically, since he was just at PI planning, he's going through all the, because it's this big process. But at the end of the day, think of a PI as a program increment planning, and basically what it is you take your Scrum teams and they're just, what are we going to commit to over the next 3 months? Which that's basically what a PI is. It's about 3 months. So what are the teams going to commit to that they can do over the next 3 months? And you sort of have this big meeting where you're trying to agree upon things. And as Nitin said, what are the dependencies, between them, so we can make sure we can have this commitment. PI stands for, if you click into the story here on the Trello board, there's actually a definition. I put it on there and wrote in.
So that's the bubble of the comment being product increment.
Yeah, I would, SPC here as well. I've just got through doing PI planning as well. Then you went through everything, and the product owner or the sponsor is going to give you a laundry list of all these things that they want to have done. And it's for the team through PI planning is to give a realistic view on what they believe they can realistically deliver value for this sponsor. And to Nitin's point, at the end of all of that, the team is deciding how confident do they feel about the plan that they just developed to deliver on their promise or commitments. And they'll have committed goals and then uncommitted goals as well, or PI objectives that the team will create and formulate and share with the sponsor. So that's all I got to add for now, because I was exhausted after. I don't know about you, but I was exhausted afterwards.
It is certainly exhausting for some of us, but thank you for that, and thank you, Seth, as well. Well summarized. There are other flavors of agility out there. Again, sometimes you talk about one thing and you get into other thing. SAFe came in, became very popular, but prior to that there was LESS from Craig Larman and Bus Bodie. Less.works is the site. We also have Scrum Inc. under the guidance of Dr. Jeff Sutherland. We also have the Nexus for Scaled Professional Scrum through scrum.org. And there's probably others I may not be mentioning, but there's so many flavors of agility out there. But in essence, it's the coordination of the multitude of teams that you have to bring forth something and to execute on the vision of leadership, typically in 3 months or so, and then you rinse and repeat. Any other questions around this? Move on. We might be able to do just one more card and then just have an open informal session.
And also just to mention, like, we normally would have a Q&A session at the end of the, if we did a presentation, but as we're going through it, we're having that Q&A part of it. And so the last card is, I find that orgs that aren't Agile are typically the ones that ask to start implementing Scrums. What alternatives can I offer? Or how can I educate further on what Agile isn't to stubborn senior leadership? Edit. They don't want status calls either. This is a good one to end on. What do you think, Nin?
Well, it's heartwarming to hear that at least people want to do something in the realm of agility. And I would try to kind of get away from, what are you really trying to get at? Would you like more transparency? Would you like to see the value delivered at a certain junction? Are you trying to get into speed to market? So irrespective of what methodology, what frameworks we use, these are just a few key things that I ask. And when we talk about scrums in quotes, I've actually recommended against implementing Scrum at some areas. I've suggested Kanban, which is just the visualization of work. And that's a great start just to get things transparent and get people talking to each other. So you can really do more complex work and eventually start scaling unless you can visualize things and move forward. So it's a loaded question. There's more context needed. But Bob, others, what do you think?
Yeah, I what you said, Nitin, is definitely great advice. And it's really, it may be, you know, if the organization's willing maybe to invest in Agile coaching, to have some Agile coaches come in and help. Because you know, assuming you might have some Scrum Masters, but it's really the coaches will help align the leadership with the teams and also kind of come up with a training plan. Because if you just tell people to do Scrum and hand them the Scrum guide, most people probably won't read it, and then they'll just start doing what they think they should be doing and making these decisions that will be, you know, that will cause problems down the road. So what you know, to do this right, you really have to have the right training and bring in certified Scrum Masters, bring in people that know what they're doing, bring in product owners that know what they're doing. And to me, you know, using like the Agile coaches, that helps kind of pull everything together. Any ideas from the audience?
Well, you know me, I would suggest also investigating disciplined Agile. No, seriously though, take a look into it. Go through the introduction.
Hey, Bob, it's Catherine Rocco. I think it also helps when your systems area and your business area are on the same page regarding starting Agile, Scrum, whatever anyone wants to call it. We, in our systems area, had started adopting Agile, and our business area really didn't care. They just tell us when the work's going to get done. So I think having the alignment between that area is an important one.
I think the other thing too is asking the question on what is the problem that you're trying to solve. If you're gonna bring in discipline agile or anything like that, the bigger question is from a leadership point of view is why are you doing this? What's the problem? Or if they state the problem, making sure that your answer and the application of agile or discipline agile can support the improvement or the enablement of success. Because you don't want to just bring something new in and then have them say, see, I knew this wasn't going to work.
Go ahead. I just real quick, I like what I'm hearing, but I also, I'm a person that says you shouldn't just immediately jump into scaling. You should basically get Scrum right first. You know, start small and then just start building, because if you try to get everybody doing it, you're just setting yourself up for not so much fun. So you get Scrum working, show success, let the organization see, wow, this team delivered this, and then start expanding from there. Then maybe look at scaling, right?
Makes sense.
Yep. Pick one initiative with one team and give us room to grow. Allow us to give you feedback. Trust us. We're working professionals. And we'll see how it goes before we start scaling. So it's not a top-down approach. It's more of a bottom-up organic approach.
And so with that, we're at time. So again, we're Agile, so we always start meetings on time and end on time. So with that, I will stop the recording. And like Nitin said earlier, we'll be available for the next 15 minutes if there's any questions without the recording on. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining.